We are recording.
Now, I'm delighted to be here in Newcastle, Western County Limerick, with my very good friends of the Long Court Hotel, and my special thanks to Mario Puchowski for the wonderful facility here, and Megan, who set the programme up for me, and many, many thanks. Now, in the very strange atmosphere that we have in the country at the moment, we are very grateful to the men and women who tirelessly counsel through psychology, psychotherapy, all of the people with major problems of all ages, and the mechanisms that they use to help people go from a black spot into a brighter area in their life and go forward is immense. And I'm delighted to be joined by a County Limerick lady, Anita Lynch, from Misneach, and correct me now, Anita, Misneach Psychological Service.
Yeah.
What?
It's
no,
Misneach.
Anita, you're very welcome.
Thanks a million.
Misneach, lovely name. Now, is that Irish?
It is, yeah. It means
what does
courage.
That mean?
Courage.
Oh, good. Misneach.
Yeah.
That might be my second name from now on.
Yeah, well, actually, my ex-husband came across it when we were living in Australia, and we were researching a name for my service, and even the symbol in how it's written. So it came from the original, the first alphabet, the Ogham alphabet, and it's just kind of the ancient writing, and it means courage. So I thought it was very fitting in giving me the link to home and what it is that it takes so much courage for someone to come in, you know, or make the first phone call or text message or email, whatever it is for them, you know.
Now, will you explain to me, because I'm only a layman in all of this, but what is psychotherapy? Okay,
so psychotherapy is what we call talk therapy, you know, so it is a way of helping people on a broad range of mental health issues. I suppose in a sense, it's a way of helping people overcome, you know, the suffering and any pain they're carrying, or general dissatisfaction with their life, you know. So we would sit with people and we would work through various different issues with them. Then, and really, it's about tapping into someone's own natural ability, you know, because it's there in people to be able to cope and manage, but it gets clouded over with life, general stresses and strains and challenges, you know. So it's just it's sitting with someone.
Your specialty then would be getting people to open up to you, and then you can pick out the layers and maybe put something together for them to make them understand, or help them understand that help is there, and they can do A, B, and C to get out of that black area they're in.
Yeah, so like, I suppose I would look at it, now my specialty would be in childhood sexual abuse. So I'd work with adults, that is my area. However, I do work with, I work with teenagers, I work with adults, I work with couples. So I'd work on a wide range of issues, but childhood sexual abuse is my specialty. So a lot of people would come in with anxiety, depression. In terms of couples, it could be communication, money issues, one or both have had an affair. In terms of teenagers, it could be anything from, you know, sexuality to addiction, bullying, that kind of stuff, you know, or parents are separating. And then I see a lot around, you know, at the moment, a lot of people are struggling across the board with just general mental health. So they're feeling really lonely, really isolated. So anyone that's using the crutch of alcohol, drugs, porn, sex, gambling, they'd be the standard enough ones. If anyone's using those more than they normally would, I'd see that a lot now at the moment as well. That's playing into a lot of people. And I suppose struggling with the isolation of COVID.
Now, we'll come to COVID there in a minute, but you know what I'm very heartened to see? More and more women are coming out from the courts, talking to the media and talking about their experience of domestic violence, domestic abuse. That is great to see. And it's about time that women or men, came out of that sort of cloud. There's no shame in this, as you would, I'm sure, in your
Absolutely not.
profession would
Yeah,
say to people, and to expose all of this.
Well, see, I suppose in domestic violence, it's a very tricky area, because you have a lot of judgment in domestic violence. A lot of people will pass judgment on it in the sense that, well, why is she staying? Or for males that are experiencing domestic violence, it is that sense of shame where they can't admit that, their wife or partner is physically beating them or emotionally, controlling them, or, abusing them in any form, really. So it's a very tricky area, and it's not one that people can untangle from very quickly or easily, because especially if someone is in a situation of domestic violence, safety is a huge concern. And it's not okay to turn around and say to someone, just leave, because that could trigger someone that's really unstable and very dangerous to do something extreme.
Yes.
So we've to be very cautious around this area of domestic violence, and we have to be very compassionate, because victims of domestic violence, they have been absolutely, trodden on. At that stage, their sense of self, their self-esteem, their confidence has been eroded, and they're made to feel like they can never leave, they'd never manage on their own, they're not good enough, no one else will love them. And then if they have children, it adds that layer that they don't want to leave and break up the family. And so sometimes it's not until, for women in general, it's not like, women have huge tolerance in relationships to put up with a lot of abuse, especially if there's children involved. So they will stay against all odds and put up with severe conditions. And sometimes it's not until one of the children are abused or assaulted in some way, and that then is usually kind of the tipping point to go, I can tolerate it for the greater good of the family, but not when it comes to the children. Because a lot of victims of domestic violence will rationalize that, so long as he's just doing it to me, I can put up with it. So long as the kids are okay and they're not aware of it, or that kind of thing. And
Yes.
so it's,
but
it is lovely, as you say, to hear the courts. There's more of it coming out.
It is.
Yeah, just like
because the judges now are imposing very severe sentences on people found guilty.
Yes,
and that's great, and about time.
It is, yeah. And see, we also now have a law after being passed as well about coercive control, which is fantastic. So it's great to see that coming in now as well. So more people, I suppose.
But there's more. The one thing there, about that coerciveness as well. It's like sort of control. I often wonder what the people that do this and inflict such pain on their partners and children, I often wonder what type of backgrounds they came from. Did they witness that bullying, that control, that coerciveness in their own home? Because some of the stories that I have heard that women have gone through, it's like, I don't know how they're able to put their head outside the door, that they're made feel so low, so unwelcome, so unloved, worthless. And that's why I've been told by a person in Limerick there that self-harm has been a huge aspect of this type of abuse, because women or men could not take it.
And it offers a release. Some people are a way of, if they're numb, it helps them to feel. So there's a reasoning behind it. And again, there's a lot of stigma around deliberate self-harm as well. But it serves a purpose. So it's about working. I would work with a lot of clients. I've worked in Pieta House for 2 years when I first came home, and I'd worked with a lot of people about, what purpose it's serving, because everything that we do that's not good for us serves a purpose in some shape or form. So it's about bringing in that understanding and the awareness, and then bringing in some self-compassion about being able to change it and looking at other ways.
I just wonder, the rudiments of society have meant that men can't open up or talk. Women are great to give them their due in talking about their feelings or their problems. But going to the very, very tragic, sensitive area of childhood abuse, it must be, I know you're expertly trained and specializing in this area, but as a human being, Anita, it must be hard for you to hear all of these stories day in and day out and trying to get your head around this. This is an innocent child abused. It must be very difficult.
Okay. Well, I suppose to clarify, John, I don't work with children for that
Yes.
particular area. I did branch out into it in Australia shortly after
Yes.
qualifying, and I discovered
Yeah.
it wasn't an area for me. However, I do work with adults that have survived childhood sexual abuse, you know, and I suppose the way I work
Yes.
at it, the way I look at it is, as a survivor myself of childhood sexual abuse, I see it as an absolute honor and privilege to journey alongside someone and to be able to show them that you can recover and that there is light at the end of the tunnel, you know. So it's a very special journey for someone that has been battling for years and years, where you'll have snippets come out with people over the years. They'll have told to different people and it would have been received, in most cases it's received badly. A lot of people aren't able to hear that information and they don't know what to do with it. So when they're full of fear, they react really badly then to the survivor. And in a lot of cases, especially here in Ireland, because a lot of people have the perception that when you're sexually abused, that it's a stranger, or sexual assault, it's by a stranger. And it's actually not. It's usually someone in your community or someone in your family, you know, which makes it a lot harder and a lot
Yes.
trickier for people then to come forward. And I suppose in terms of the abuser, you know, they're predators and they're very skilled in what we call grooming. And when a child, they're well able to spot a child that's very vulnerable. And it could be coming, I would see a lot of people come from homes where there's a lot of chaos or instability going on, and parents having their own stuff. So they're able to get in there, you know, and it's not as noticeable. And they're very skilled at that. And then it's the piece around, you know, to the child. They're telling the child if they tell anyone, they'll be in trouble and it's their fault. So I work with adults that come in here from all ages. You know, one of my oldest clients was 72, you know, so I've worked across the spectrum with people of all ages that have spent their life, you know, believing that they're at fault, you know, and being surrounded by families and communities that protect the abuser. And people don't realize they're protecting most such situations, families in their own sense of shame. Families don't want the neighbours to know, which is a real traditional Irish culture. They don't want the neighbours to know. They don't want people to think bad of them. They don't want their private business being out. And generally they don't know what to do, you know, at the end of the day. So in their way of trying to protect the whole family and themselves, what they do then is in turn, they are, you know, really damaging the survivor and they're protecting the abuser, you know, because sexual abuse thrives in silence, in the cover up, brushing it under the carpet, you know, and unfortunately that happens a lot, you know. So it's not, and then it's very hard.
Happened an awful lot.
Oh, it's happened huge. You know, people are frightened for blaming the church, you know, but it's not just the church. The majority of it has happened in people's homes, you know, and not by priests, you know. And then we see a lot now coming out in the courts. You know, there's a lot more cases coming forward. And unfortunately, you know, the courts can only take it so far. The Gardaí can only go so far. It's a very hard thing to prove. And if people don't come forward, you know, it's nearly impossible to get any kind of a conviction or any kind of closure on it, you know. But people are starting to come forward a lot more on it now. There's a lot more support out there and a lot more understanding.
The one thing, Anita, is this, that when you're dealing with adults that have come through the history and memories of childhood sexual abuse, do they go on after the proper counselling through your very good selves and your colleagues? Do they go on to live better lives, or did they take the scars and the hurt and the anger with them all their lives.
That's what the beauty of therapy is about, John. It's people come in and they are absolutely bent and twisted with the pain, of the wounds that have been inflicted, so it's all the memories and the flashbacks, and so you have a lot of people. I would see a lot of people that would have a lot of anxiety. They might have turned to alcohol or drugs or sex, to be able to cope with what's going on. So if in terms of, I would see a lot with women where the being sexualized at an early age would see them going towards men that are not safe, and it's that feeling of trying to recreate something that's very damaging to oneself, So it's lovely to see people come in and to see them, that there's a lot going on. They're not able to sleep. They might have developed an eating disorder or addiction or anxiety or anything under the sun can stem from it, struggling to, hold down a job or one toxic relationship after another. And it all stems back, because I'm a psychodynamic therapist. So it's all about childhood and the influence of the past experiences. And it's about exploring all that in a very safe way, in a very gentle way. And then watching them. It's like it's watching a flower blossom, because they learn about themselves, and they learn that, for a lot of people carry the inner critic that's constantly saying you're not good enough, no one will love you, all this kind of stuff. So to work through
Yes.
and break down the beliefs, and for people to discover their own inner strengths, it's an absolutely beautiful process to watch. And for a lot of people, it's learning to communicate. So a lot of survivors, it's about, being able to stand up and say, this happened to me. And a lot of them, go on to the journey of making the abuser accountable. Whether they're successful through court or not is irrelevant. It's just being able to make the statement to the Gardaí. It doesn't matter if it doesn't go any further. If the Gardaí, their hands are tied in terms of GPB, if it's not over 70% chance of success, they can't go to court because of the cost of it, But it's about being able to hold, yes, as an adult, being able to hold that perpetrator, now the abuser, accountable and say, you did that, you were wrong, not me, kind of thing. And that's very healing for people, and then they're going out the door with their boundaries. They're able to communicate better. They're able to mind themselves better. They're able to ask for what they need, and they're not carrying the shame, because it's not their shame to carry. It's handed.
No, it's not. No.
It's back to the abuser, but a lot of people, yes, walk around carrying shame of somebody else, just like the family members of an abuser. They struggle as well, because they're carrying the shame of what the abuser has done, and the fear of judgment and the community finding out and all that kind of stuff. So it's far reaching in terms of the impact and the damage.
That is, you have said so much there, Anita. Can I just zone in on something there? I can see the way that you are so successful, because you have an empathy about you, and I'd say anyone could go to you with a horrific story and you'd have that understanding. That's not only a profession, but it's skillful as well. On that point, do you have to continually upgrade your skills as well with the changing times, even with COVID now?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Like, I'm a fully accredited therapist, so I'm with the Irish Counselling Psychotherapy Association of Ireland, and part of that is I have to do professional development, so many hours every year, and part of that is I have to abide by their ethics and guidelines and professionalism, and then I also have to have a supervisor. So because of my caseload here, I see a supervisor once a fortnight, and in that then I would be discussing, how many teenagers I have, or how many adults, how many couples, to make sure that I don't burn out and that I keep it nice and even. There's not too many of either. And then it's making sure that how I work with people, that I'm able to make sure that I keep it professional, because as a human being and someone that has experienced a lot of trauma myself, that I don't bring that into the room and put that on my clients. So that's very important.
Yes.
But I suppose the one thing I want to get across in that, because a lot of people wouldn't know about it, is that my clients aren't identifiable in that process. So for my supervisor, it's age range and gender. You know, there wouldn't be any information relayed that could identify them, you know, and I think that's very important in this day and age, that people know that as well, that, you know, I'm not going off talking about them to my supervisor, you know, that kind of way, that it's all about processes and the theories and the approaches, you know. So it just makes sure that it keeps us between the ditches, that we are doing the best we can and that we do no harm, you know.
Does it upset you, Anita, like a doctor, like a nurse, like everybody else in a profession, if you're dealing with a one-to-one and they don't make it? Does that upset you?
What do you mean by that, John? They don't make the session?
In the sense that, no, if they're not able to cope with life even after a marvellous series of counselling services.
Oh, yes, of course.
If they go back.
Yeah, no, it hasn't happened to me personally in my private practice. But obviously it would have happened in Pieta House. Again, not to me personally. I think, you know, you have to respect everybody's journey, and we're not professionals here to save people. Like we can't carry that as if we're superheroes. You know, we are there. We're privileged and honored to kind of, you know, for someone to have the courage to come in and reveal, you know, what it's like to be them and what has happened to them, you know, and to be able to share that space and journey alongside them. But I mean, at the end of the day, you can't save people. You know, I'm not doing the work, is the way I look at it. Even when I was in Pieta House with people coming in, and I'm very comfortable talking about death, about suicide, and self-harm, all that kind of stuff. And it's about, you know, offering that space to people and being able to give them a perspective. But also, I think for a lot of it that I would have seen in Pieta, a lot of people, they need somewhere to go where they're not judged, where they feel safe. They can say anything. Like the practice I run here, people can come in, they can curse, they can whatever. You know, obviously, you know, if someone comes in and tells me they've killed someone, I can't hold that information, or, you know, I'm a mandatory report for Children at Risk Act, you know, like any professional. But, you know, so it's creating that lovely space for them to just be, this is how it is, you know, and then it's worked through that. But there is people out there that, of course, you're going to be touched by people you meet. Why wouldn't you? You know, and you can't journey alongside everyone. People, you know, if someone is intent on killing themselves, and all you can do as a professional, the way I look at it is, you know, we put safety plans in place, we contact next of kin, you know, we bring in the medical. So it's a multidisciplinary team. So you'd work with the GP, you'd work with a psychiatrist, psychiatric care, you know, you'll do whatever you can possibly do. But at the end of the day, you know, it's, if a person,
it's a free choice.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. You know,
it is. I'm going to end this with something that you said there, which is very, very striking. But if people wanted to connect with you or get further advice, they can do so freely, can they, by contacting you?
Of course, yeah, no problem whatsoever. Yeah, like they can contact me on my website, www.misneach.org. I have a Facebook page, Misneach Counselling Psychotherapy Services. I'm on Instagram, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Twitter. So there is, and I'm on, I think it's therapyhub.ie as well, another platform for therapists. So yes, absolutely. Someone can contact me. They can, like, I think in the present day thing, a lot of people are suffering with anxiety. So even to pick up the phone is too much. So I will get a text from someone. Is it okay to contact you this way? Of course. Like, you can text, you can send me a message on Facebook or Instagram, you can send me an email, you know, and we take it from there. So I totally understand that not everyone can ring up and go, oh, I'd like some counselling, you know.
No, of course.
It's very daunting.
It is very daunting, but I think when they have somebody like you at the other end of the line, or text or website, that brings them over the threshold to start a new journey. And I think that's marvelous. And I think that's so important, you know, on
It
that
takes
point.
huge courage.
It does, courage. But one thing, I'll just end it because you said it there so eloquently, and it struck me because I meet an awful lot of people in my own work, Anita, that are struggling mentally, physically, in every way, shape and form. And it's great that you're there, that I've made that connection, and I can refer them to you, and they can take that on board in a confidential, professional way with you. But the message of the entire interview, you summed it up so well. When people come into you, men and women of all ages, that are broken and bent and can hardly stand with the shame and the horror and the pain and mentally of what has been done to them. And then you said, after a while, they blossom like a colourful flower. That is fantastic. I love that.
It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful to witness. And that's why I know people throw these words out there, but that's why I see it as a privilege, you know, to be part of that journey, for someone to come in and trust me, because they can go to anybody, you know, but, you know, to come in and trust me with that, to hold that, and to be able to, and I suppose to be able to offer that non-judgmental space for them to go, it's okay, that I get it. I understand how hard it is. And also, I suppose, the way I operate with people, especially for anyone out there that hasn't had therapy before, hasn't experienced it and might be afraid of it, or have had gone once and didn't like it for whatever reason, that, you know, it's that whole thing of, you know, going for therapy. It's very important that the relationship between you and your therapist, that there's a connection there. Because if you're sitting in front of a therapist and you feel that they don't get you, they don't understand you, you feel they're judgy, or you don't like to look at them, or they remind you of someone you can't stand, then it's absolutely okay to turn around and say, this is not for me, can you refer someone else? Now, I would hope that any therapist out there is worth their caliber would turn around in the first session, because I do with all my clients, that at the end of the first session, I would turn around and I'd say to people, I may not be the right therapist for you. I'm not going to put you under pressure. The first session is about, I'm getting the essence of them, they're getting the essence of me. And I'd say to people, you're more than welcome to book another session, go away, have a think about it, have a chat with someone. But to start that process of listening to your instinct, your gut will tell you whether she's for you or she's not, or he, whichever the case may be. And that I personally, I'm not insulted. You know, I'd much prefer someone to continue on the journey of therapy, and I'll give them a recommendation of I have plenty of colleagues to refer on to, you know, but just for people to be aware that, you know, the first person, you know, when I came home, I went through 3 therapists before I found the right fit for me, you know, and that's really important, you know, because it's hard to find the right person, you know, someone that has not only the training and qualifications, but the lived experience and the wisdom and the skills, you know. So it's just to be careful.
Yes, very, very important. Well, I think it has been a fantastic eye-opener talking to you, Anita, today. I know there's many people that are very anxious to hear this interview, judging by all the comments that came in on the various social media pages. And when the lockdown is over and you return to West Limerick, I hope that you and I can have a coffee and discuss the ills of the day. I think now,
John, we might stretch it to a pint.
Well, I was actually being polite because I didn't know what way to forward with that.
Yeah,
you know, a coffee covers a multitude.
Yes, doesn't it? Yeah. I thought now we'll be real about it. We'll meet and have a drink.
All right, fair enough. You're straight talking. A pint, it definitely is.
Yeah.
But just take care of yourself personally, Anita, and we hope that we will have a catch up when this lockdown finishes and you come back down home.
Yeah,
I hope to catch up with you and put up.
Yeah, as soon as restrictions lift, I'll be down the road. Yes. You know, I haven't been home now for a number of weeks, which is particularly hard. So I might as well be in Australia with the way things are. I suppose the only comfort in it is that everybody's in the same boat. Everybody's finding it hard. There's no one sailing through all these restrictions, all this fear. you know, all this uncertainty.
Well, if they come out and say, Anita, that things are flying it, I'm afraid they're living in cloud cuckoo land, if you don't use the expression.
Denial. Yeah.
Denial.
Very challenging and very
I
difficult.
love the name.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, very, very difficult. Now, it's Misneach. I love that. I love the Irish name, Misneach.
Yeah, Misneach Counselling, Psychotherapy.
I can get the idioms there after a while.
Yeah.
Lovely. Well, we'll be putting this up on our various screens and platforms. A very big hello to your family in Ballyhahill as well, of course. And
yes,
just
my
take care
mother
of
has
yourself,
already
and
given
we'll
me a
talk to you
shout
soon.
out. All right. Thanks a million, John.
Oh.
Absolute pleasure. I really enjoyed it.
And take care.
Thanks again.
No, I enjoyed it. It was eye-opening, and I think the people that are going to view this at home and abroad will find it instrumental. And the message is, please, from Anita and all the counsellors across Ireland is, you're worth something. You're an individual. You do not deserve to be tortured or bent with anger or frustration or sadness. And if you just have faith in the counsellors, you will be that plant that literally will blossom into a fantastic flower. Simple as that.
It's to reach out in any way that they're able.
Yes.
It's to reach out for support, because there is support out there. Yeah.
There is. So start talking. Thanks, Anita.
All right. Thanks, John.